You are now entering the flood zone. Here's your host, Dr. Lance Flood.
Welcome back to the Flood Zone. If you're new here, here's the deal. We do a deep dive on one topic. I'll show you how to see it coming, what to do when it hits, and we'll close with hope and practical next steps. It's as simple as that. So let's jump in. No text messages were found, no hotel receipt turned up in a coat pocket, and there was no tearful confession on the couch. Yet something in this marriage has shifted, and both of them can feel it, even if neither one of them can name it. And that's where we're starting today. Micro-infidelity doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk through the front door in scandal. Instead, it slips in through the side, settles quietly into the routine, and starts rearranging the furniture while nobody's watching. By the time a couple realizes what's been happening, well, it's been happening for quite a while. A working definition, and I want to keep this simple, is that a micro-infidelity is any thought, behavior, or connection that you're protecting from your spouse because you already know they wouldn't be okay with it. The behavior might look completely innocent from the outside. Maybe it's a friendship, a work relationship, or someone at the gym whose schedule you started to notice. The behavior isn't the issue necessarily, but the protection is. The moment you start managing what your spouse knows about a relationship, and the reason you're managing it is because you want to keep it, well, something has already crossed a line. John Gottman's research on what he calls positive sentiment override is useful here. Couples in healthy marriages extend good faith to each other automatically. When that starts eroding, it's usually because emotional energy has been quietly redirected. The spouse who's being drifted away from often can't articulate why they feel the way they feel, but the distance is real and they're both living in it. There's also the comparison problem, and this is one that I want to spend a moment on. When a person is in the early stages of an emotional attachment outside of the marriage, they're almost always comparing the real, complicated, stressful human being that they're married to against a carefully edited version of someone who doesn't share their bills or their bad mornings. That comparison is wildly unfair, and it doesn't matter. It's still happening, and it's still doing damage. Now, two things are true about vulnerability, and both of them need to be said. Some marriages create conditions where this kind of drift becomes far more likely. Chronic emotional neglect, a spouse whose love language has been ignored for years, loneliness that's been living inside the house unaddressed. These are real atmospheric conditions. When someone outside the marriage suddenly notices you, really notices you, the pull toward that is what happens when a person has been starving. That doesn't excuse the drift, but it does explain it. And sometimes this happens in a marriage with no obvious wound, no dramatic neglect, two people who genuinely love each other and one of them lets something small become something it shouldn't have become because they weren't paying attention. Both are true. Which one is true in your marriage matters because the response looks different depending upon the answer. The bottom line from every case I've ever witnessed is that the affair that never happened still costs the marriage something great. The intimacy, the vulnerability, the laughter and attention that went somewhere else. Those belong to the marriage. Their absence is felt, even when the cause is invisible.
Warning, the flood watch is now in effect. Operational phase initiated. Remain calm and implement readiness procedures.
The warning signs of micro-infidelity are easy to dismiss one at a time. It's the pattern that gives them away. Secrecy with devices is usually the first observable sign. Not privacy, couples are allowed privacy, but a qualitatively different kind of protection. If your spouse picks up your phone and you feel a jolt of anxiety, that's worth paying attention to. Something is being shielded. Even if nothing explicitly inappropriate has happened yet, something is still being kept. Selective sharing starts around the same time. A spouse begins editing their day before they report it. Certain names don't come up. Certain conversations get summarized differently than they actually went. It reads like omission because that's exactly what it is. Then there's the grooming pattern, dressing slightly better on specific days, being more aware than usual of how you come across in certain company. When someone outside the marriage has become an audience, behavior shifts around them in ways that are hard to fake and hard to miss. Emotional withdrawal at home is often the sign a spouse notices first, even when they can't explain why. The person is physically present, they're engaged with the kids, functional in every visible way, but something is somewhere else. Couples who've been through this describe it as living with someone whose attention has a destination that isn't home. On the atmospheric side, the conditions that make this more likely are worth naming plainly. Emotional neglect, ignored love languages, resentment that's been accumulating without resolution, and high-stress life seasons that narrow a couple's bandwidth for each other. These don't cause micro-infidelity, but they do create the environment where it finds the footing for it. Marriage maintenance isn't a luxury for couples who have extra time. It's what prevents the drift in the first place. The couples who stay close through hard seasons are almost always the ones who treat their connection as something that requires active, consistent investment, regardless of what else is happening around them.
Alert! A flood warning has been issued for your area. Critical conditions detected. Stand by for decisive insight.
Well, the almost has been discovered, or confessed. The friendship that had a layer to it has finally been named. Whatever it was, it's out now, and both spouses are standing in the wreckage of something that's hard to even describe to other people. First thing, the injured spouse's pain is legitimate. The absence of a physical component doesn't reduce what's happened. Emotional intimacy, attention, energy, vulnerability, when those go to someone outside of the marriage, something real was taken from the marriage to fund it. And the grief and the anger in response to that aren't disproportionate, they're very appropriate. For the spouse who crossed the line, the response has to begin with complete ownership. Minimizing, even internally, is going to make everything worse. Nothing happened doesn't hold up when weighed against the concealment, the redirection, and the cost to the marriage. Something did happen. You've got to own all of it. Next, complete contact with the other person ends. There's no goodbye that serves anyone, no closure conversation that actually is about closure, and it ends because the marriage requires it to end. Getting honest about what the connection was meeting is also essential, not for the purpose of an excuse, but for prevention. Loneliness, unmet needs, a season of low intentionality, whatever it was, understanding it is the only path forward to making sure it doesn't recur. This is uncomfortable but necessary work. Transparency going forward has to be genuine and generous. A spouse who's been blindsided needs access to communication, schedules, to whatever helps them begin to rebuild a sense of safety. That access needs to be offered, not extracted. And it should be offered without resentment, because resentment at that request is a sign of something that hasn't fully been reckoned with yet. For the injured person, the harder truth comes later in the process, not now. Eventually, after the anger has had time to be genuine and after the grief has moved through some of its stages, the most productive question isn't about what the person did, but rather what was happening in the marriage. This requires an honest assessment. A marriage is always two people. An honest reflection on what was present and what was absent is how a couple rebuilds something stronger than what they had initially. Now, if you're in this right now and you feel like you're at the end of your rope, I want you to know about marital triage. It's an 8-week intensive restoration program I developed for couples who are in exactly this kind of crisis. 8 weeks, 50 minutes a week online working directly with me. We combine CBT, DBT, and emotionally focused therapy with solid biblical truth, and since 2018, we've seen a 96% success rate among couples who are fully committed to the process. There's no cost. We run on free will donations because this work matters too much to gate it behind a price tag. Visit maritaltriage.org. I'm here and I want to help.
Attention! The floodlight has been activated. Elimination protocol fully engaged. Maintain situational awareness.
What I've watched God do in marriages that look like they were past saving is the reason I'm still doing this work. He doesn't just patch things. Instead, he restores them, and sometimes what gets built on the other side of a betrayal is something the couple never actually had before. Real vulnerability, real communication, a type of intimacy that requires both people to have gone through something honest together and chosen each other on the other side. Psalm 51 is David at the lowest point of his story, and what he asks for isn't just forgiveness. Instead, he asks for a clean heart, a renewed spirit. Restore to me the joy of your salvation. That word restore carries more than return. It means recover and bring back fuller than it was. And that's what God does. It's what he specializes in. If you're sitting there today with the weight of the almost right now, on either side of it, the God who breathes life back into dead things is still at work in your marriage. Don't make a permanent decision in the middle of a season that isn't over yet. Now, church leaders, when a couple brings you something like this, the pastoral impulse toward reconciliation is right. The instinct is good, but sequencing matters. Reconciliation that skips genuine accountability is just a postponement. The spouse who crossed the line needs to sit with the full weight of what happened before the marriage can begin moving forward. Cheap grace applied too quickly doesn't heal anything. It simply buries the wound where it can continue to do damage. Instead, ask the direct questions. What exactly happened? How long? Who knows? These feel invasive, but they're pastoral. You can't shepherd what you can't see, and ambiguity here almost always serves the person who has something to hide. You also want to watch for minimizing. It wasn't anything serious, or she's reading too much into it. I don't know why this is such a big deal. These are all signals that full ownership hasn't happened yet. And then let the injured spouse be heard. Pushing them toward grace before they've been allowed to fully name what happened is more pastoral pressure rather than pastoral care. Their grief deserves room. If you want some better tools for walking couples through crises like this one and the many others you're going to see in your congregation, the Plug and Pray Marriage Enrichment System is worth your attention. It's a 16-week group program I built specifically for pastors who want to run effective marriage ministry. Biblical truth from 1 Corinthians 13 combined with proven clinical tools. You'll get the books, the facilitator manuals, certification training with me personally, and ongoing support throughout every cycle. No licensing fees ever. You purchase the materials once and it's yours to use as long as you're in ministry. Remember, healthy marriages build healthy churches. To learn more, visit plugandpray.com. That's plug-and-pray.com. By the way, if you've got a marriage question you'd like to ask or have discussed on this show, please send it to thefloodzone@floodlegacy.org, and we'll be sure to address it anonymously right here on the show. All right, so this week's challenge is that I want you to have one honest conversation that you've been avoiding. Doesn't have to be big, doesn't even have to resolve anything. I just want you to tell your spouse something genuine that they deserve to know and that you've been holding on to because it felt easier to leave it alone. But connection lives in honesty, so start with one conversation. Be sure to join us next week as we discuss a particularly difficult topic, and that's domestic violence inside Christian marriages. The abuse that hides behind closed doors and Sunday mornings, along with the silence that keeps everybody stuck. If you don't need to hear it, I'm sure you probably know someone who does. Don't miss it. Let's pray together. Father, I'm asking you to meet every person who came into this episode carrying something that they haven't been able to name. The spouse who knows that something's wrong but just can't point to what it is. Maybe it's the one who's been drifting and doesn't know how to find their way back. The husband or the wife who just had it confirmed and is sitting here right now in the kind of pain that's hard to explain to anyone who's never felt it. Meet them there, God, in their confusion, their anger, and in their grief. You're not surprised by any of this. You haven't looked away, and you aren't finished with these marriages. God, give them the courage to say the things that need to be said and the grace to hear what needs to be heard. Do only what you can do. Restore what's been broken in a way that makes it stronger than it was before. And Father, I'm praying for the pastors in this moment too, the ones who are walking alongside of them, who are going to be sitting across from a couple this week with no idea what to say. Father, give them the wisdom and the discernment that they don't have on their own. They're doing holy work in difficult places, and they need you desperately. In the name of Jesus, who makes all things new. Amen. I want to thank you all for joining me here this week. Remember to laugh with each other, love each other, and know that God's strength shows up in your weakness, and His grace is bigger than your worst day. I'm Dr. Lance Flood, and you are now exiting the Flood Zone.
This has been a production of Amnesty Media Group, a division of the Flood Legacy Foundation. To learn more about the foundation, please visit floodlegacy.org.